Hello, friends. We are back with episode 208 of the Our Weekly Highlights podcast, and this is the mostly, I dare say, weekly show where we talk about the excellent resources that are shared in the highlights section and elsewhere in this week's Our Weekly issue. My name is Eric Nance, and yes, I must have jinxed myself a couple of weeks ago because I said, oh yeah, we should be back to a regular weekly schedule. Well, sometimes things out of our control happen too, so it didn't quite happen that way. But we are back at least this week with another episode for you. And joining me as always, in between putting out various, you might call fires at the various projects he has under running, Mike Thomas. Mike, I hope you can keep a level head here. I know you've been knee deep in some fire squashing, right?
Well, haven't we all? Haven't we all? But
Yes.
none today yet, so knock on wood.
All right. Well, we'll keep that good positive vibe going. I already told him about some various legacy things I've got to fix. So note to you out there that have maybe like IT groups that migrate servers from time to time, better check those things after migration. Sometimes things happen. Hashtag just saying. Anyways, we got some great content to talk about today. You don't need to hear about my rants about that. And this week's issue was curated by John Calder, and yet another one of our OG curators on the team. And he had tremendous help from our fellow ROK team members and contributors like you all around with your pull requests and suggestions. And later on in the show, actually, one of our other curators is quite involved with this, so stay tuned for that. First off, as you well know from our previous episodes and also in the general our community, you are aware that Posit, the company behind our Studios IDE that has been, in production use for many organizations and data scientists for years, has been working on a new IDE called Positron, which is, at a high level, a very opinionated fork of the Visual Studio Code IDE with a lot of nice enhancements that tailor it better to a data science kind of workflow in R or Python and, frankly, even other languages that it supports. Things are going really well with it. I have been using it in my day job now at my local system for almost, 6 months, 7 months now. Plays nicely with Nix, by the way. I couldn't let that not go in there. But one of the newer things that we knew was coming, so to speak, maybe with rumors or whatnot, but now it is in preview mode, along with the IDE itself, which, again, we want to stress, it's still in beta, so it's not like it's been a full production release yet. But one of the preview features that has landed is the Positron Assistant. You probably can guess by the name what this is empowering. Yes, this is empowering the use of large language models for both code completion and agentic coding, which is in essence giving you that nice interface for you to help, ask questions, and it will help you with development or answering questions, much like a typical chatbot would, but powered within Positron. This is early days, but I am eager to say that I've had some use of this recently. I'll share that in a minute. But the first roundup that we're talking about today in our highlights is a great blog post by Stephen Turner, who just recently changed roles, and now he is an associate professor of data science at the University of Virginia. So congratulations, Stephen. He's actually been an earlier pioneer of using AI and LLMs in his code development, especially with Positron. So he mentions that he's looked at this in the past in previous blog posts, which are linked in the aforementioned post here, where at the time this wasn't built in. So he looked at different solutions to plug in code completion, for example, as at that time GitHub Copilot wasn't baked in. So he had tried frameworks like Codium, Tab9, and Continue, which I've dabbled in a bit in the past. But with this Positron Assistant, it now comes with batteries included, so to speak, with the use of GitHub Copilot, which is something you can opt into in your GitHub account. There is a professional version, but I think you can get away with just using their free tier for this. But, may have to fact check me on that. But it can let you configure that, and then you can use then the Copilot in your Positron IDE for your code completion. It isn't a very radically new thing per se in the world of IDEs, because even VS Code's been able to do this for years. RStudio had support for this earlier on, maybe a couple years ago, year and a half ago. But he's overall, it does work well. I will admit in my uses, there are times where it still hallucinates just a little bit of what I want to do, especially with some shiny stuff. But it has saved me some time, especially with writing change logs or writing release notes or writing documentation. It's actually not too bad, not too shabby. It is much better than when I tried it a few years ago. So promising there. Where I think Stephen was really curious about is the agent mode. And for this, within the Positron Assistant, you can configure not just the GitHub Copilot tie-in, but you can also configure the use of Anthropic Claude. You bring in your Anthropic API key or your OAuth. Yeah, I think it's API key for Anthropic. That is the only one supported at the moment for this mode of the bot, or the plugin. Perhaps when it gets to production, it'll get future plugins or I should say account tie-ins. But once you have that, he was curious about what it would be like to use this agent mode to actually try creating a package. And what he did to test this out, he just simply created a skeleton of a package of use this. With the create package, you get your kind of scaffolding lined up, but a very minimal setup, maybe just your description, your namespace, some placeholders. And then he asked the agent in this Positron Assistant to basically create create a package with a function to reverse complement a DNA sequence, because Stephen has been heavily involved in genetics for years, document it with our oxygen, and then write tests. And he has a screen capture of the agent in action to build this. Every time I see one of these, there's a part of me that's like, oh gosh, does that actually work? But in essence, it wasn't too shabby. He said, and you can see in the video, it basically, scanned the structure of what he had in a directory, creates a function, writes its documentation in our oxygen, and then whoever he wants to run the tests that it helps create as well to check that that's working, and then runs the DevTools check to make sure everything is working, and no errors were found. He did have to make one little correction in the license field, but that was mostly due to the defaults of use this. He wanted to put the MIT license, but that's all, very minor enhancement there. But overall, he seems to be, pretty impressed, at least with this very fit for purpose, much more streamlined example. Time will tell as how this works with a more larger scale ask. Maybe you have a more complex thing you're working on. I do mention for the Shiny enthusiasts out there, Mike and I included, Positron does have support for the @shiny tag as well that you can put at the beginning of your query so that it can be Shiny aware, so to speak. If you're trying to help enhance an existing app, maybe building a new app, then you're able to take advantage of its, I'm guessing, pre-trained hook into Shiny knowledge and documentation or whatnot. So that's a little note for the Shiny users out there. So Stephen's going to look at this, in more robust situations, but overall, not too bad. And one thing to note is that this really didn't cost a whole lot to run through his account. It didn't cost too much. It was about 9 cents for that trivial example. Yeah, obviously if you do that a whole bunch of times, that may add up a little bit, but certainly way cheaper than some of the other services you might pay for in this space. So the key, though, on that, and there's a footnote about this too, is that a lot of people are paying like the default account access to these services, or it could be like $20 a month, sometimes even more, depending on which tier you put in. He's doing this via the use of buying API, you might say tokens or credits beforehand. They're kind of like a pool that you can draw from and you pay as you go. And then when you run out of them, you buy more. in things like this, I think that's a huge cost savings compared to using the more traditional accounts. So if you're new to this and you're wondering just which way do you do this paid approach, definitely if the service you want to use offers this kind of token bucket approach, take that and take it now. And that way your budget will person, whether it's you or your organization, will thank you later to make sure you don't run through these just with that default account access. I've been using this a little bit. I did it for some more basic troubleshooting, and it did help very nicely, about 80% of the way there. So as always with these things, I'm pretty new to it, but definitely promising that now I don't have to flip over to another interface just for that agentic chat. I can now do it within the confines of Positron. So I think there is improvement to be had, but overall, not too bad, all things considered. So I'll keep an eye on this space.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, and it's nice to see the sort of seamless integration that we're getting now with AI assistants in the Positron IDE. It's a really nice sort of chat pane on the left side of the IDE that takes up maybe 20% of the screen, where you can sort of follow along and type in your prompts and take a look at what Claude in this case is thinking and doing, and then sort of see it happen in the other 80% of your screen within the scripts and the editor and things like that. So that agentic mode was pretty wild, and I would definitely agree with the notion of trying to leverage the APIs here in terms of Claude. From a cost perspective, as mentioned in the blog post by Stephen, you really don't have to worry about running up some giant bill, because you can, and this is something that we've done at Catchbrook with some of our enabled AI-enabled Shiny apps that leverage Claude on the back end, is you can just do $5 at a time, essentially. I think that's probably the minimum that they make you preload. And we have, maybe 10 or 20 prompts hitting that app a day. I know some of our users are probably writing, leveraging that API, some of our developers, I should say, to have these AI sort of chat and edit features within the VS Code IDE. And I maybe have to spend $5 every 6 months. Like, it's so cost effective.
Unbelievable that you are saying that, because this will sound crazy. I spent almost double that when I'm at the cafeteria at the day job for lunch. Like 6 months, $5. That's amazing, especially when you hear about all the horror stories of people with AWS accidentally racking up their bill because some they kept turned on. This hopefully reassures you that, Mike, you of all people are not breaking the bank on this. That's amazing.
No, and they give you a notification, I think, when I think we have it on auto renew, and they give you a notification when they're about to charge your credit card another $5 because you're coming up to that limit. But it's so cost effective right now, especially, I'm all about self-hosting, and I think in terms of privacy, there's a lot of times when we do that and have to do that, and it makes sense. But if you do compare the cost of the third party like Claude or OpenAI, I'm not sure how their pricing compares, but I imagine they're going to have to be competitive in terms of their API offering. So it's probably fairly close. But from a cost perspective, versus self-hosting and leveraging these third parties, the third parties I think really have it now at this point in time. When you think about having to stand up sort of the cloud infrastructure, unless you already have your own server, on your server rack like Eric has in his basement. But we're not doing a whole lot of that these days, leveraging the cloud. But a great walkthrough, I think, of how to leverage this agentic mode within the Positron IDE, that if you didn't believe it before, you can see it and believe it, because there's a couple great sort of short 1 minute, 1.5 minute video clips in here that Stephen adds that I think really tell the story, just as well as he articulates it in the blog post. So a great walkthrough of the combination here of Positron and Claude in this case.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I think, right now it's Copilot and Claude. I would, again, not be surprised if we start seeing more offerings in that configuration that you do, including for those that are living on the self-hosted side that might bring their own, Llama or service on top of that. I've experimented with a few things, like you said, in that nice little basement server that I have here a few feet away. Tried with some various things. But one thing to know, and I remember, Joe Chang and others have said this, Claude still seems to be, at least as of now, one of the better R code, LLM, model providers. I know there are some things that come in here and there, and there is some interesting work that Simon Couch at Posit has done to help benchmark various models. So you want to check out his blog post to get a good take on those. So my guess is these two will be kind of the standard for at least the short term, but they're set up for success, I think, to bring in others as this matures. And again, for the Shiny fans out there, just put the @Shiny before the start of your real query, and it'll basically call that Shiny Assistant right off the bat, provided you have the Shiny extension also in your Positron extension list. So really, really exciting to see, and I think over time we'll start to see, at least from the Posit company standpoint, the fruits of the labor of going to this newer direction for an IDE to give them more opportunities to hook into novel technologies to make the data science development experience much easier down the road. Well, Mike, in our last highlight here, it's a reminder that just a couple months away, it's coming up fast, we're headed to PositConf 2025. You and I have the good fortune of being speakers at the event. I'm also going to be helping out with our Pharma Summit there. Lots of cool things happening. And as usual with these conferences, there is a wealth of different topics that are going to be talked about in the various presentations, the lightning talks, the full talks, and the workshops. It's a lot to take in. Definitely, whether you're even on the fence of going or not, you'll probably want to look through the program, and then you might see, man, that's a lot to digest. Well, it wouldn't be a theme. This episode has definitely a theme to it, because it's one thing to pursue the agenda via the traditional web page that they expose. But what if you had a friendly interface to kind of ask it questions, and then it would give you the information about the conference right at your leisure? Well, that's where our next highlight comes in, because our very own curator at our weekly, one of our curators, Sam Palmer, a few weeks ago had released this quietly, a Shiny app that's an LLM-powered app to explore the PositConf 2025 agenda. And yeah, it definitely got some attention, so much that in this last highlight, Isabel Velasquez from Posit has literally wrote a blog post on their official blog here about this new LLM-powered agenda pilot app. So you can get to the link to the app. We'll put it in the show notes, of course, as well as the link to the post. But this is really nice. It's a very straightforward interface. You ask it a question. In fact, in the blog post, Isabel asked, what are all the sessions related to Positron? And sure enough, within less than a second, it lists out all the different sessions there. If you want to learn more about Positron, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago, lots of already. I'm seeing 2 or 3 great talks in this screen capture, 4 even. Wow, there's a lot going on there. So name your topic. You could find it in this powered assistant here that Sam's put together. If you had asked me if this is possible a year ago, I would have said, you're crazy. But no, we're not crazy. We're living the good life, I guess, here. Because all of this, every bit of this, is powered by open source in terms of the architecture, and then leveraging one of these aforementioned services under the hood to power the LLM itself. So what does Sam have to do to accomplish this? First, he used the HTTR2 and Chromote packages to scrape the agenda details from the conference portal. So again, there's a bit of homework you have to do to figure out, okay, what are my CSS selectors? How do I select this particular table of information? That's scraping 101 at that point. but it is definitely achievable as long as these agendas, this is a note to future conference organizers, put them in a web format, makes it easier for things like this to exist. So that was the cleaning exercise. He got all that data, did a little cleaning up with the tidyverse, and certainly the per package is involved as well. But then how does the LLM be able to ingest this? Because obviously the pre-generated, training models that say OpenAI or Anthropic Claude use definitely don't have this information. This is definitely a novel development now, but typically speaking in this workflow, you would somehow feed this data into a retrieval augmented generation or RAG approach. Now, there is a new package in the kind of AI ecosystem in R called Ragnar that helps you create this more readily available knowledge storage so that the LLM can use this and query it for the information based on what the user asks. This is relatively new, but I remember, in my early days of exploring this seemed like a bit of a gap other than some real, custom solutions I've heard people like James Wade over at Dow talk about a couple of years ago to kind of engineer this all yourself. Ragnar is giving you a nice interface to do this all from the confines of R. So you got that knowledge store. So how do we let users use this? And that's where obviously Shiny comes in, because you can connect this with Elmer. Elmer is really becoming that hugely powerful engine to power a lot of this from the R side. And I dare say the more I use it, the more I'm really enjoying the experience. And while I have the audio mic here, an audio thanks to Hadley Wickham himself, who saw an issue I filed on the Elmer GitHub about AWS Bedrock support. He turned it around in less than 24 hours. So thank you, Hadley. I won't try to be spoiled about that in future PRs, but boy, oh boy, that really makes my life easier at the day job. So Elmer combined with Shiny Chat is how this Shiny interface is powered here. Shiny Chat is a great package that gives you that, very familiar looking query prompt and then streaming the text results back in near real time as if you're on one of the other external services. So that would be great if you're just looking at this locally. How do you share it with people? So in this case, Sam published it on Posit Connect Cloud, a newer offering from Posit that has the keys required for the authentication to OpenAI baked right in, so the end user doesn't have to worry about this. This is the part where I'm maybe saying this for Sam's benefit. Obviously, this app probably is going to take off a bit, especially in a month or so from now. Hopefully, it doesn't break your bank, but we'll see, I guess, later on. Hopefully, you're taking the token approach like we were advocating a few minutes ago. But nonetheless, obviously, you can deploy this in many different ways, but Posit Connect Cloud there certainly is a convenient way to make all that happen. So again, look at where we are now, folks. A AI-powered conference explorer, where in the past, we would have maybe say a Shiny app that had a dashboard, a table of these, conference talks, and you can do filtering and whatnot. Yeah, it served its purpose at the time, but we know this is the way a lot of people are going to interact with this stuff, especially when they want to find that one topic or that one domain. They want to find it quickly. So I could definitely see people using this literally at the conference itself when they start to decide what talks they want to go to next. So I'm curious to see if it'll hold up, but overall, really impressed, and credit to Sam for the awesome job on this and Isabel for spreading the word.
Does this mean that filterable DT tables and reactable tables are a thing of the past, Eric?
Ask me another day, Mike. I'm not sure if I want to talk about that now.
I think the answer is no.
I agree with you.
But this chatbot is awesome, and I gave it a shot, and I asked if there were any talks about building data science teams that use both R and Python. And my talk is multilingual data science, essentially. So it's not I'm not using all of the keywords perfectly in there. I wanted to see if it could figure it out. And my talk was the first one that came back. So I was very impressed with this. The response time was very fast, which made me immediately dive into the GitHub repository, which has been linked, I think, in the blog post, as well as if you're on the app itself, there's a nice little hyperlink button on the left side of the app. And trying to figure out exactly how this goes on under the hood, looks like there's a few different OpenAI models that take place, maybe one for creating the vector database. It looks like there's some evals that Sam is doing, which is really cool to see how well it's performing. And then obviously the call itself to be able to retrieve the answers to the user's prompt, essentially. So really interesting. There's also a requirements.txt file in here with a bunch of Python packages that says it was generated by RS Connect Python. I couldn't find any Python code. So I'm trying to figure out if that's legacy or if this is truly a multilingual project in and of itself. There's DuckDB going on the back end. So I think it's a really cool repository as well. Sorry to get, in the weeds here, but I think it's a great repository to be able to use in future projects and take a look at sort of how all the different pieces came together between, creating that vector database, having system prompts, working with Shiny Chat, and getting sort of everything to work together, including evals, which I feel like a lot of folks just sort of forget to care or have some sort of approach to evaluate the accuracy of your LLM model that you're creating. So awesome job. This is definitely a repository that I'm going to come back to quite a bit, as well as hit this, especially as the conference comes closer, hit this app pretty hard, probably to help build my agenda, which I think is going to be really cool. I imagine, as you mentioned, Eric, that there may be a lot of folks, if this gains in popularity, that will be hitting this pretty hard, especially as it comes towards September here. And my hope is that Posit would be willing to split the bill here, but we'll see.
My guess is, or if I had to guess, there's got to be some kind of support here for this, because this is going to make their life a lot easier too to boot, right? I mean, good grief, they didn't have to build this themselves. The community came through once again with one of these. It's amazing to see. And yes, I was while you were talking there, seeing if I could pick up my talk, as I just asked, can you tell me if there are any presentations about shiny bookmarkable state? And thank goodness mine didn't get picked up there for such a niche kind of topic. It found it very quickly. So I'm excited to see what else I can find in this exploration. But yes, I am going to geek out on the GitHub repo that Sam's put together, because this is, I'm sure you can attest to this, Mike, this is something where we are being asked time and time again, how do we leverage tech like this in apps that focus maybe solely on it, or maybe there's a part of the app that focuses on having this tie-in. So I think I'm gonna definitely check this out a bit, because in my explorations with tying Elmer to AWS Bedrock, I just had a major breakthrough. And again, thanks to Hadley for pushing that to the finish line. I think I'm going to be starting to play with this a bit. But hopefully my job security of doing fun interfaces with filterable tables is still intact. I think it will be, like you said, but we got to get with the times too sometimes.
I hope so as well. Well, Eric, I just asked it, are there any podcast hosts who are presenting at the conference, just to see what would happen. It says, yes, Eric Nance is a podcast host presenting at PositConf 2025. Voice behind our podcast, and you co-host the Our Weekly Highlights podcast. I was not mentioned, which just further goes to prove the correct notion that you are the star of the show.
We didn't want to end on that note, did we? But no, that's intriguing nonetheless. So,
how funny is that?
That's a cute one, yeah. What's next? Somehow, I've heard this on other podcasts, there will be some service that somehow takes my voice and completely butchers it to do some random things. Like, it's happening, folks. It's just a matter of time. So please, listener out there, don't take that as a challenge. Somebody else is probably going to do it.
Well, we're already there.
We're already there. So, yeah, well, on that, rather entertaining note, I think we, I don't have much more follow after that. So we're going to close up shop here pretty quick here. We got some aforementioned things to put out in our respective day jobs here, getting back to the the weeds, so to speak. But, really fun issue to talk about today. And, much like what Sam demonstrated here, he from the community has helped the industry greatly. You all in the community can help our weekly greatly. You know how to do that. You can find the upcoming draft of this issue. And if you found that great new resource, that new blog post, that new app, that great new package that's doing mind-blowing things, you can send us a pull request with the template already provided for you to put that into the upcoming issue draft. And our curator for the week will be glad to review that and most likely merge that in on the spot. So definitely value your contributions there. And we also value hearing from you in the community for all the various things that I either get wrong or things you like hearing about the show. We love to hear from you. We have a contact form right in the episode show notes. Definitely take advantage of that. If you're just in your podcast player, want to quickly send some stuff to us. If you're on a modern podcast app, you can send us some fun little boosts along the way as well. Details are in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with us on social media, that is, you can find me on Blue Sky with our podcast at bsky.social. You can also find me on Mastodon with our podcast at podcastindex.social. And last but not least, you can find me on LinkedIn. After you sift through all the AI-generated fluff sometimes on there, you can find me. Just search my name, and you'll find me there causing all sorts of chaos. Mike, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at mike-thomas.bsky.social. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you search Ketchbrook Analytics, KETCHBROOK, you can see what I'm up to lately. And although I am a business owner and a CEO, you will not find me at any Coldplay concerts.
Yeah, I'm glad that wasn't your face that popped up on that when I saw that feed pop up. Yeah.
Data science adjacent, though. Airflow.
That was.
Yes.
That was. Yes. And there were some ramifications, as they might say.
Oh, yeah.
That made the waves. So Mike and I are not that kind of person, so we are safe in our respective homes here. But we hope you are safe in your respective home wherever you listen to this episode. We promise we won't cause you any additional chaos. That will conclude this episode of our Weekly Highlights. Thank you so much for listening from wherever you are, and we hopefully will be back with another episode of our Weekly Highlights next week.